Okay, everybody, welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed doing the first step of our project. Now, this is the second step, which, if you want to just jump ahead, you got really into the first step and you want to just start doing the second step, that's fine. You can also wait and look at your drawing, go back into it, which is something that I did. As you can see, I decided to add some more colors to mine. I added some more patterns or dots in some areas that I didn't have them in before. And I just tried to find some places that needed a little more attention. And then when I started to look at it closer, I started to see some animals and some other kinds of almost like little creatures in there. And that is a really neat thing about abstract art, is that you can start to see things in it that you might not have seen before. So something that you want to do next is, if you have finished all of the drawing and coloring that you wanted to do with your first part of your project, is to add something that's water soluble. Now, so for some of you, you might have a watercolor set at home. I'm not going to assume that you have a watercolor set. I'm going to assume that you probably have some markers. So you can either use markers or you can use watercolors. And I'm going to show you how you can use the markers, assuming that that is what you might have. And then if you have watercolors, you can just use the watercolors straight away right over the crayon that you put, and you're going to notice that everything is going to do that thing that I said earlier, which is resist it. So we're going to pause this here. I'm going to get my watercolors ready, my markers that are going to become watercolors, which is kind of magical. So I'm going to get those all ready, and then we'll do the first part of this. Okay, so we're back, and I have selected some markers, which I'm going to show you how to turn those markers into a kind of a watercolor paint. What you want to do is just find some places that you want to, so I started off here, find some places that you want to use some of that watercolor effect. And right here I use some turquoise. I'm going to go ahead and do some orange and show you what I did first. Okay, so here's my marker, and I'm just going to go in to the area that I want to turn into sort of a watercolor paint. And you don't have to be very precise. Like, I know that there's a lot of you out there that want to color things in really, really well. But the thing about once you add the water to these markers is that it all bleeds around. It all sort of spreads out. So you don't have to really be super careful, but you do want to put the color in pretty dark. So I'm going to just start off in this area and add the color in with the marker as much as I can. And then I'm going to get a brush. Now, if you don't have a brush at home, you can also use a Q-tip if you wanted to. And the Q-tip is just as good. In fact, it might even be better because it will be smaller and you can be a little bit more precise with it. But I am going to go ahead and use a brush for the demonstration, in the hopes that you do have a brush. But if you don't, you can use a Q-tip too.
Mommy.
So I'm going to take my brush. Here's my brush, and I'm going to dip it into just regular water. So I've got my cup with water here. There it is. And I'm dipping my brush into it. And just like we do in art class, you want to take your brush and sort of pull it against the side of the cup so that you get the extra water off. And then you're just going to take that water and put it right over the place where you put the marker. And you're going to notice that all the places that you put the crayon in are pushing away at that water. And the water is turning the marker into paint, sort of a paint. And you can actually even take it and carry it around on your brush into some other places if you wanted to. So you want to go ahead and do that color in one place, and then you can't really go over that section again with marker because your paper will rip. but anywhere else that you still have dry, so over here, somewhat in here, but it's going to be kind of tricky because you've got crayon there. Edges are going to be fun to do, and of course once you get some of the marker in here, you can carry it up into some other places. So I'm going to go ahead and do some more marker in different places, and then I'll show you what happens with the water again. So I'm now starting to put some marker in, and you can see that I've put green up here at the top. I put some blue on this side, and then I even took some of the blue and pulled it in through my green because I'll get a nice new color with those two colors together. And then I added some pinks down here. I'm probably going to add in some more color in there. More pink over on this side. And I'm going to keep going with some of my marker in some other places. Like I said, as you can see, it doesn't really draw very well in anywhere that you put crayon, but that's okay because you can go back in again once you get everything a little bit wet.
Now go play.
And again, you want to just be really careful not to get the crayon, or sorry, the
Mommy.
marker right over anywhere that's wet
Mommy.
when you're drawing this part. So that's why it's better to do all of your coloring first with the marker and then go back with the water after that. Now, of course, if you're using watercolor paints, that doesn't apply. You can just put the watercolor paints anywhere that you want. Okay, so now I've got most of my paper colored in. I've got color on the top, color on the bottom. I've got color in some places that I didn't have it before, so that makes me very happy, and I'm ready to start using the water on top of my marker to turn it into kind of a watercolor. So you can just start by bringing the brush that's wet, and again I'm pulling the brush across the top of my cup, and look at that, it really does change color when I'm putting the water on there because it's mixing right now with the orange, so I'm getting a brand new color. And you can start to pull some of that up into the places that you use the crayon, and you can keep mixing it, and it really does look like you just, well, I mean, you can still kind of see the lines, but it's almost the same as using watercolor because it gets very fluid and it turns into something that you can move around, which you can't really do when you're just using marker. So, and you can really easily just go right over places where you have the crayon, and you can see that it still shows up on there, and that's kind of the effect that you want. You want to put it pretty much everywhere on your paper so that it really does look like you have painted over your crayon. And if you have watercolor paints, it's even easier to do. Okay, so that's the next part. You can go ahead and do the rest of this, and I'll do it myself, and then I'll show you again when we're done. Wow, that really changed it a lot. So here's my finished painting. It's really a painting now, and you can still see the places where I have the crayon from the first drawing, and all these places where my colors mix together to make new colors, which is really exciting for me. I love it when I can get my colors to mix. So you can go ahead, do that, and then you're going to want to let this dry because when it's wet, especially if you use thin paper, which might have been what you used, you don't want to pick it up until it's really dry. So you can either be really careful to pick it up and put it someplace good to dry, or you can leave it right where it is so that it dries. It should just take about an hour or two to get completely dry, and then you're going to see the crayon really push through all those places that you added the watercolor. And I would love to see how your pictures turned out because I think they're going to be all very different from mine, and I'll be just curious to see how they look. So if you can show me a picture, that would be great. Have fun, my artists, and I'll talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.